Hello, hello, welcome to the 12th episode of Binge Live. Tonight, it's just, my co-host Chris Faraone and me, like, talking to each other. In this case, I will be interviewing Chris. Probably in the future, Chris will interview me. Who knows what could happen.
Lots to talk about. So,
there is. So,
we're finally getting some of those shorts up. So, I got Nate's coming soon. We got some others to go back on, and a lot of great evergreen content with BINJ. So,
by which Chris means we're taking this longer show and then chopping it up into shorter pieces, and those tend to get more views, at least right now. Although we'd like to see the views on this show go up, but we know it takes time and constancy. I think the religious people would say, which we are trying to do. We're doing this basically every week. We skip Thanksgiving, but otherwise we're chugging along. So the deal is that Chris has been cranking out pieces on a couple of important issues to us anyway, but we think to the general public. So we're just going to talk about both of them. So the I would say the biggest one.
Well, Jason, let me actually I want to, since it's like BINJ and we have forever. I just want to just for those who do end up seeing this, and I know there's just a ton of interest, especially when we talk about the prohibitionist stuff, but a lot of the BINJ and Talking Joints memo are separate things. As anybody who needs to know this stuff, just give us, it's out there. But for the parameters are pretty simple. Boston Institute for Nonprofit Journalism is a nonprofit that three of us, Jason, John Loftus, and myself, founded 10 years ago now. Congratulations to
over
us
10,
and everybody who's worked with us. And we do heavy lifting, big investigative journalism a lot, but not always. We've done a lot of stuff that, sometimes it falls under investigative, but also cultural, arts reporting, basic, really local city hall reporting, state house reporting. And even when we started, it's interesting to see how far we've come and how far we haven't come in some cases. But Mike Crawford, then known as Mike Can, one of our first columnists. We started with 4 columns. I believe Haley Hamilton, Jason Pramas, Mike Crawford, and the 4th was a public records column by Maya Schaefer and Andrew Quamir. So we really, it's a solid lineup, I got to say. By the way, we have been around, but anyway. So wow, that was a solid lineup. So we did a lot of cannabis reporting. Now, with that said, it's actually pretty interesting, and this is why I'm glad I have a minute to come full circle on this, because with BINJ, it takes a lot. We have people who are donating money. We're raising hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. That's individuals, sometimes foundations, not so much businesses, but
we're doing it right now. Yeah,
we're doing it right now. Yes, please donate. In fact, we should put a ticker, right? We should definitely.
Okay. I got one. Hold on.
Yeah, so I could talk, and so it's really interesting because we take that so seriously, and I mean that. I don't mean that in a corny way. I mean, like, look at the stories we do. You won't see nonsense, and that doesn't mean I don't get, like, I'm not a big sports person, but I don't consider like all sports reporting nonsense. We've done a ton of sports reporting, mostly stuff that's not being covered. Interesting, busting Fenway Park on basic regulations that they're not following, like not taking cash, things like that. So that's nerdy stuff. It's kind of like even nerdier than the NPR show Only a Game, which I always say is like not possibly for people who actually like sports. But anyway, so with cannabis reporting, in 2016, the voters of Massachusetts voted to legalize, and that trust me, not only was I not someone who said, okay, no need to cover anymore. No, we tripled down, and but not always in the sense of where we were going to expend BINJ resources. Now, of course, a couple times a year, and now with psychedelics, with Jack Korslime, BINJ does do a lot of reporting. But I got to say, here we are 10 years later, and Talking Joints Memo has its own budget. And, look at me, I work for both. So when I do something, it is, if I say it's poof, it's BINJ and Talking Joints Memo. BINJ, because BINJ can share something with Talking Joints Memo. Right. But my point is this: we are at a point to kick off this conversation. We are at a juncture now, kind of like we were 10 years ago, where we got critical, political related cannabis stories underway. Now we've had them the whole time, but really heavy, existential for the adult use recreational program in Massachusetts. So here we are. This is, you can consider this, those who love collaborations, crossovers, whatever you want to call it. Here we are doing a Binge and Talking Joints memo collab podcast view, YouTube thing. I sound like I'm 80 years old, but you get the picture. So.
Yes, I mean, so this is apt. I was going to do that a lot faster, but it's good that folks get the detail. I've got this piece queued up. I'll just get it up here on screen. So here's a Talking Joints memo piece that Chris wrote. Like, we'll later be talking about a binge piece Chris wrote recently. It's kind of a overview of the current situation. There's a number of moving parts, but Chris can ably discuss them all pretty quickly. It's from the press to politics, everybody versus Massachusetts cannabis. Now, y'all should know, like, I am, if Chris is, Mr. Cannabis, I am not Mr. Cannabis. Like, I was Mr. Cannabis for 1 year, like 1985 primarily, right? And I did probably a lifetime's worth of cannabis, and it did not agree with me, so I stopped, right? So I haven't been involved in the cannabis scene. I wasn't involved with legalization other than kind of as a relatively passive supporter. Like, yes, I think people should have the right, if they can drink, they should be able to do some cannabis. That's been possible now for almost 10 years, one way or the other, longer if we're talking medical marijuana. So I don't usually talk about this stuff, but I pay attention, and, I support, I'm a co-owner of Talking Joints Memo along with Chris and our other partner, John. And when cannabis became, fully legal basically in Massachusetts, I watched carefully, looked around the various communities in Massachusetts that I would, be hanging out in and talking to friends and everybody. And, guess what, right? The sky did not fall, like, in any way. Like, even for myself, who doesn't precisely love the smell of cannabis that is smoked, like, I was like, gee, is it going to be everywhere? No, not really. It's
people say that about Manhattan. People say it about Manhattan, and I got to say, as someone who does love the smell, it does smell like weed in Manhattan more than Boston. But yeah, I hear you.
Whatever, I'm just saying,
you're in the whole Cambridge Somerville area too, so you got.
I'm pretty frequently there, and I, again, like, it's plenty of dispensaries, plenty of people using here and there, but it's like, there hasn't been this uptick in anything catastrophic at all, right? But apparently there are still those who think that legalization, and normalization of cannabis use, a substance which should never have been banned, was banned for, as I think any reasonably educated person knows, it was banned for racist reasons primarily, probably with a healthy assist. Chris could tell us from the different.
I'm not gonna do the old. But we got to get past the background, man. It's like hip hop. Like, I don't want to have to talk.
I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Like, it should never have been banned. It was banned all over the U.S. It's gradual. We're gradually coming out of it. Don't know what the Trump administration is going to do, but no federal administration has yet moved to, like, do any blanket ban. So I don't know what's up with this stuff. Why now? Why don't you tell us, Chris?
At the macro level, it's so complicated to the point where I think anyone who thinks that there could be a grand conspiracy in any direction is absolutely nuts. I mean, at this point, you have, and we're not going to talk about hemp, and Massachusetts doesn't have much of a hemp market, but there's this whole other war going on nationally, and a lot of those puzzle pieces at any point could shift and change everything we're talking about, which actually makes this all a lot more interesting. But we try not to think about it. We put our heads down and we do this reporting at the State House, on Beacon Hill, and in Worcester at the Cannabis Control Commission. Now, what Jason's referring to is a ballot initiative, a proposal for 2026 it's one of 40, by the way. There's a lot of action at the ballot.
Busy year for ballot stuff, yes.
A big year
coming up.
We could do 40 episodes. It could take up our whole 2020. In fact, that would be pretty cool. We could do a bunch. And of course, 40 aren't going to qualify. It's looking more like a dozen, I think. But one of them, unfortunately, is maybe a measure that would end recreational cannabis dispensaries. Now, you might be watching this saying, what? How is that possible? There are hundreds of them, and more than 1,000 licensees if we talk about the whole supply chain. Of course, cultivation, manufacturing, so not just retail, delivery. There's a lot going on here, not to mention ancillary businesses and just that, tens of thousands of jobs at stake. So big to do. And this ballot initiative, it's cleared several hurdles already. It cleared the hurdles of getting to the petition process, and then now they submitted apparently more than 75,000 signatures required to advance to the next step. And the way ballot initiatives work in Massachusetts, I usually leave this out, but hey, we got all night. We got some time. Well, yeah, basically, if these signatures are approved, I want to talk about those signatures for a second, but if they are approved, then the legislature has an opportunity to basically, do the will of the petition. I don't know if that's ever happened. Actually, I'm sorry, it has, because things happen, they get rolled into other things. Sometimes you do have to push. And, cannabis, I got to say, going back to 2016 and 2008, when it was first decriminalized, and 2012, when medical marijuana was passed, those are all because the legislature did not act. And then after the signatures were submitted, the legislature again did not act. And then these bills passed. And I got to say, before I get to the big punchline here, which I think I already said it, that they're trying to ban it now. But, even the bill that the legislation we have now that gives us a medical and adult use cannabis program in Massachusetts, that was, really, I don't want to say painstakingly, annoyingly rewritten, right, by legislators, to the point that now, actually, at last week's Cannabis Control Commission meeting, and we have an article at Talking Joints Memo about this by Zach Huffman, they have to have a red tape removal committee, because these initial regulations have so much it's just so cumbersome. So now, though, maybe they won't have to have that committee, because if this does get on the ballot, what's basically going to happen is these people are going to have a shot at potentially knocking out adult use cannabis dispensaries. The petition calls for still having a medical program, and not exactly. I don't want to do what they do. I don't want to make a propaganda about theirs. It doesn't have entirely draconian penalties for cannabis. It basically would keep a lot of that in place, but of course it would delete the whole industry. Now, I also say what does perhaps sound like propaganda, but it's shown in study after study, is that in states that do not have an adult use market, the underground thrives. Everything that people who claim to hate adult use cannabis, and we'll get to who they are in a second, everything they say, they don't like the dangers affiliated with it, health. It's just insane. I mean, because right now, perhaps to a ridiculous extent, the cannabis is tested. It's very safe. It's safer, frankly, than it probably should be, because it's extremely costly and it's killing a lot of the businesses. So a lot of these arguments are just absolutely insane. But you know what? They got those signatures. Now let's talk about how they got those signatures. This is a story that I led on, Talking Joints Memo led on, and it's happened organically. I ran into people collecting signatures in parking lots near where I live, and they were lying. They were literally lying about what this did. Now, of course, after I put my first video up, I started getting tens and then dozens and then more than 100 overall, and more than 1,000. I can't even read all the comments because some of them were crazy. But because people were, and also it spills over on a Reddit where people were reporting, seeing, running into these people. Now some of them were doing what's a straight up bait and switch. Here's the clipboard. Yeah, I actually have a clipboard, right? I have one of my favorite clipboards, actually. So they were saying, "Oh, here, sign this." Hold
on. Let me make this more visible to people.
It's just a prop. Hey, sign this. Cool. Sign this for rent control, right? And then they would people were signing a thing for the cannabis ban. Now it's interesting because we put a piece out and other pieces followed. This wasn't just us screaming into the wind as happens sometimes, because hey, people want to read about this. It's clicky, right?
Right.
Well, you got there's a whole demographic that that hates the adult use, the OG, that, hey man, I want to go back to growing in my basement. Yeah, because every time I need a bag of weed, I want to go have to play fucking video games with a drug dealer for 2 hours
Well, I was going to ask you if there are forces that just don't want legalization because they're going to do better with their cannabis business.
Are they forces? They're forces. Yeah, they're next
I don't know, man.
forces. I mean, I think
forces. Okay.
I will say that though. I don't think that if this does happen, if this really is going to be on the ballot, I do not think that like asshole contrarian attitude is going to be helpful. I'll say that it's going to be because, and I'll tell you why. It's just like because we're we never left junior high school. Nobody likes being around the positive person. I mean, everyone's just always complaining. Everyone's a curmudgeon. Maybe especially in the dumber places. All people do is whine. And I'll say so. It's interesting because before when you were talking about because some of the old reefer madness, the things that used to be said, if you'll notice. Oh, you also see 10 years and the sky hasn't fallen. Now, when you said that, I'm thinking it kind of dawned on me that, we haven't seen what kind of campaign they're going to roll out. But what we have heard is that, they're in their statements and their comments, and I'll get to some of those because they're deplorable. They said that they're going after the CCC being in disarray, bureaucratic stuff.
Tell people what the CCC is again.
No, I'm sorry. The Cannabis Control Commission. So basically, the governing apparatus of cannabis in Massachusetts. Now, yes, is it in shambles? No. Has there been just a bunch of nonsense and soap opera
Massachusetts.
Drama.
I mean, none of this is surprising.
A lot of soap opera drama, some minor corruption, things like this, and it's kind of ridiculous because, that. If they're not even, they don't even have like, hey, 35 kids have died to point to. They don't even have. So like now all their old prohibitionist nonsense has been proven. It's not going to happen. We have a 10-year experiment. So what do they have? Oh, your governing apparatus is flawed. Go fuck yourself. It's so insane. So, and who are
Thanks
they?
for letting us know that. Yeah.
They are Republicans. They are literal Republicans. Massachusetts.
But aren't like, 900% of pot smokers Republicans? Like, where are all the Republicans that don't smoke cannabis, or consume cannabis? To be very
where I think cannabis is bipartisan enough. Cannabis is one of those interesting topics. I think it's where surveillance, which we cover at BINJ a lot, reminds me of it. Is that it doesn't matter how it polls. Like 100% of people can say they don't want to be surveilled in their home, and 100% of these assholes in Congress will still sign any Fourth Amendment violation into law in a heartbeat. It doesn't matter what. It's a total cognitive dissonance. So with cannabis, it doesn't matter what the people in the districts want. It's always in their heads. Sometimes they're Christian and. They found a thing in the Bible about I
say it that way because very early on, I still got the ticker up. We don't necessarily need this ticker up. Very early on in my very brief journey with cannabis, I discovered that, I had this idea in my head that hippies were left wing. That was not true in 1985. Like a lot of them were quite conservative, whatever they look like, and whatever they were smoking didn't matter really. There was a lot of, individual kind of cowboy behavior from especially male hippies. And I think that's still the case for their sort of descendants,
Yeah, and Trump has not been helpful. They did, the recent omnibus bill that put the government back to work also killed the whole hemp industry, including not just like the gas station gummies, but also, people making CBD creams. That's another episode for another day. But with this, so, basically what we have is there's a lot of other stuff, boring stuff that's more complicated, like lab testing and things that we cover at Talking Joints Memo. But this is going to be front and center. It's going to be a war. I'm already seeing. So that I'll say, one of the stories we're going to talk about. I'm already seeing. Actually, we can talk about any of them because what's happening is, like I said, I'm not here to cry conspiracy. We don't need that. Whether it's coordinated or whatever or however it happens.
People are just piling on, man. It's nice.
In the past 2 weeks, we've seen a piling on. Now, the Associated
Let's start with
Press,
this.
Yeah, the Associated Press alone.
All right, there we
It's an interesting thing. So now the AP, I tried looking this up in various ways. AI is so worthless, or whatever you want to call a lot of these bots. Well, also, because I was hoping to check it. I just wanted to see simply how many syndications this thing had. All right, which is not always easy. I figured. It could be helpful because what it is a story by the Associated Press. For those that don't know, that's
a local kid, apparently. Like,
Yeah,
I
it's
don't
a
know
local
this Leah
story.
Willingham.
Yeah, I mean, it's a local story. All the sources out of Massachusetts, and it's like, listen, there's been a lot of stories kind of like this recently. A couple token examples of. It was actually interesting. I have a family member visiting me this week who has what may be, we believe, cannabis hyperemesis syndrome, which is like CHS, I think it's called, which is really it's an allergy to THC. I'm not saying this stuff
Sure.
doesn't exist, and should information exist about it. Every time it is presented, though, it is presented as 99 or 100% of the equation. It's mind-boggling. So a lot of
Yeah.
the scare tactics that we're seeing now, or even just these kind of propaganda-minded articles, I know that the people don't necessarily mean ill by it. It's not like, I know a lot of people think there's like the alcohol lobby. I mean, the alcohol lobby is insidious in any other ways, but this is really just bad journalism. I'll tell you, because of stigmas that still exist, there's, an editor just completely has their guard down, apparently, all one time after another when it comes to cannabis coverage. The things that happen, you would never let this go without an opposition quote saying this is all.
We're both editors. Yeah, we both been over this piece, and it's really bad. I mean, where are the statistics? Where are the studies? Like, this is pure, as you said in your own response piece. It's purely anecdotal. In other words, it's just some stories
and they
from some individuals,
and they want to be taken seriously. And on the other thing is, like, it's like, listen, man, we are like 30 years from Half-Baked, where Bob Saget stands up with, with a line that's too vulgar for me to say. I could say it, but I'm not trying. What my point is that, like, it's been a while since, like, people understood that this is weed, and you're still looking. It's like there's not a problem, and you're still looking for a problem. And I gotta say, I hate the what ifs, but I'm gonna what if the hell out of these outlets, because, or I don't know if it's a what. Where the hell is their coverage of opioids? And does it exist? Sure. But you know what? Guess what? If I ran the Associated Press, there would be, stories on fentanyl every day. And I'm sure that they could point to reporters who that's their beat. And I know some of them do good work. It's not all garbage. But man, this should never appear. So I just, they
don't have a cannabis beat, first of all. Like, basically we do.
So I tried counting, Jason. I could not. I stopped at like literally 400 because, not everybody runs the same exact title, headline, and there's different pictures. So, but this thing ran all over the place. So this one article, which, by the way, they go for a week. People syndicate 2 weeks articles that are 2 weeks old. It's what we in the business call an evergreen. My God, the thing just keeps popping up. It's like a bad nightmare. And because, of course, since I cover this stuff, I get Google alerts. So that's one. And that was not the only one circulating that week, I got to say. And then another one that I showed you from the Globe.
Oh, but before we get to that, let me just say, like, right here, I have up this subhead. Brain fog becomes your new normal, right? And I mean, so they're just talking to some individuals, a couple of whom are doctors that have some concerns, right?
Is that picture? I gotta ask. Is that picture like anonymous?
A college student.
Is that anonymous on purpose? Is there also a real picture of that person, or are we like covering their face like they just told on the mafia?
They have an AP photographer here, Robert F. Bucati. I guess we could ask Robert. Like, maybe you got some without the like dramatic shadow thing for something that's not illegal. Is
there anybody in the United States who has this fucking common problem that you was willing to have their face on camera? It's so ludicrous.
What I'm bringing up here is that, sure, right? I've seen some work on stuff like brain fog from cannabis use or whatever, but
sure,
that's also describing, what social media and heavy AI use are doing to people. So how do we tease those things apart? Like, how do we tell that these people that they're quoting are not having a problem with being like heavy users of social media, like that they're having trouble concentrating, as so many of us do, including you have ADHD, I don't, but I myself feel, since I'm terminally online just as a journalist, right, that like I don't necessarily focus as well as I used to, right? Is that brain fog? I certainly don't use cannabis. So I just find this all to be poor journalism, right? Like I don't
and you
understand.
have an eye for watching, bad medical journalism. You read way too much.
I do. That's kind of one of my specialties, right?
I would just put this all in there, as is cannabis journalism that claims things are, the healing miracle. But I will say that is really not as common as people might think. It's kind of like the way I think, police all think that news coverage of police is just like uniformly bad. But if you actually Google like the last 100 references for like a certain police department, like 50% will be about their dogs, 20% will be about getting cats out of trees. I mean, it's really that ridiculous. And so I got here's another.
Chris, do you see the cannabis coming at us here?
I do see the weed out. Watch out. I do. So
oh my goodness.
We have a story on Talking to Its memo this week. This week, researchers have published more than 37,000 scientific papers about cannabis since the beginning of 2015.
Mm-hmm.
So
that's a lot. None of them were quoted here, except something mentioning that like there is stronger cannabis available, cannabis products.
That's a big thing. And
that's not news, right?
There's quotes from, I don't want to call those particular doctors grifters, but I just, you see the same faces show up over and over. Everyone's got their little thing. You got, Dr. Lester Grins. No, actually, who is that in there? Inhale MD. What's it?
Where are we looking? The same piece or another piece?
Lester, sorry. No, actually, don't worry about it. But
all right.
One of the doctors in here who,
down below here.
Weed is okay, but the Globe. Are we on the Globe?
Jordan Tischler. No, we'll go to the Globe.
Jordan Tischler. So Jordan Tischler is kind of right now. It appears to be having his cake and eating it too. Weed is. He's a pro weed. He's Inhale MD. I think probably has that copy. I'd probably get
right
C&D just for saying it on the podcast. But he is high THC stuff, and it's like, yeah, okay, sure. I hate to write all this stuff off, but anyway, let's move on to the Globe one.
All right, let's go look at the Globe piece. 1 second, folks. I have to also
the Globe one is really just another side of the same exact coin, which is instead of having a reporter waste their time interviewing people who have had bad experiences with weed. And by the way, I think
there we are.
It's so interesting. We have these great interns. One today asked me if it was okay there was a source they reached out to, and they knew that person, like they had knew them not that close, but growing up years ago. Yeah. And they were like, "Is that a conflict of interest?" I'm like, "No, that's not it. I'm not. Not only is that not a conflict of interest, but I'll go one step farther and say, like, anytime you see any bullshit article like this one, who the fuck is the person? In this case, it's a writer, so obviously they probably know the writer. It's the Globe.
So why is this one bullshit? This one I haven't read yet.
So this one is, first of all, that headline: rifling through the kitchen trash for a used.
So the person's a heroin. This is a heroin junkie we're reading about, Chris.
People are fucking dropping dead from fentanyl as this thing is published, right? It's like we have real drug problems in the state, and can we have both? Yeah. Yes, but we don't. Okay,
hundreds of deaths a year we have, right?
I just can't believe. It's really sad because, if there is an issue here, sure. Dependency is as soon as we moved from talking about dependency to addiction with cannabis, I just hung up the phone. I mean, and I'll tell you, number one reason why, I am not qualified to. I mean, I did study psychology as an undergrad, but I will say, but since all of their analysis is bullshit. I mean, for me, I just feel like we're just constantly seeing people replace one thing for another, right? So anyway, and I just feel like cannabis, as we've seen over the past 10 years, is relatively safe here. And the cherry picking that they do with the few things that are not, or finding these people like our author here to hold on a pedestal. And now listen, of course, we're editors. We know that this writer probably didn't put this crazy fucking headline. But this headline, that headline is literally, and that picture, I mean,
another shadowy person.
This is another shadowy. Does anybody with fucking eyes smoke weed? Does anybody with a nose in Massachusetts consume marijuana? I just can't even. Mind-boggling.
It's a stock photo. It says image from Adobe stock, right?
So you're so addicted to weed, you smoke all day. Can you take one selfie?
Yeah.
It's so stupid. And so really though, I gotta say, it's so interesting because there's all these writers associations. Jason and I are active with some, and we're always, I was the editorial director of Association of Alternative News Media. Every week you're asked to sign another thing. Here, this one, this week where nobody's allowed to say junkie when you're talking about, your relatives who ransacked your house for, $5 to buy pills, and listen, I don't go around calling junkies, nor do we use it in our journalism, but it's always some lecture until it's someone like the Globe at the top of the food chain doing. I mean, this is not only embarrassing, it's reckless. This is stigma causing. Thank God it's behind a paywall.
Yeah, right. I happen to have access to a subscription.
Yeah, I know. I'm just saying. I'm just glad more people can't read this bullshit.
This one does actually quote a study, right? And it says, according to a study by Yale Medicine, about 10% of people who begin smoking cannabis will become addicted, and 30% of current users meet the criteria, I guess, for addiction. I haven't looked at the study yet. I will. And then this person says, when I first read that number, 30%. She jumps right to the 30% figure, not the 10% one. I was stunned, yet I shouldn't have been. So why is this a bullshit article?
You went right back to digging in the trash.
Right.
Right back to digging in the trash. And it's just, listen, man, maybe I just got, it's so, first of all, as far as addictions, definition of addiction, this is talk about the goalposts were set and now everybody has to go by it. Cannabis is something that, first of all, a substance that has various forms that different people use in different ways. All right. And, honestly, I think this person would have been better off speaking to an expert who could be like, all right, you know what? Maybe you should have like a gummy, a 5 milligram gummy at 8 in the morning. And that'll, for me, when the winter comes and I can't be smoking indoors, or I'm watching my lungs or whatever, you change you change your consumption. And frankly, I'm not here lecturing anybody ever about how they should consume, but this person may not think they are, but that's certainly how their words are being used. And as for, the whole rifling through the trash bit, there's so much drama in here. There's another line about how when she moved, the person moved to Washington State years ago, there were so many, dispensaries that, couldn't get away from them. Well, that's your fucking problem. It's like making it like it's, Vegas and you're a gambling addict. I hate to sound like some kind of libertarian fool, but geez, is there any personal responsibility here? With a line like that, I would certainly ask my reporter, what is the fucking point? Are you saying they shouldn't be there because you're rifling around the trash? It's just bullshit. And that's my, I hate to be this mean, and I rarely am. I know I have a reputation, and I for perhaps this kind of bile. And I write like that sometimes, mostly when I write about this kind of stuff, really prohibition stuff. I want to tell another quick one before we're out is, Kevin Sabet. Kevin Sabet is a national prohibitionist. He's like the leader of the pack. I wrote about him in that piece Jason had up before. And
I can pull that back up.
The level of his nonsense, and it's interesting because even on a live stream like this, I'm careful. We don't go around always just calling people liars and cheats.
That's unwise.
I called the people who collect those signatures of cheats because they cheat. I saw it with my own eyes.
You saw them doing it. You witnessed
several
it
times. As for Kevin Sabet, I call him a liar. And I had some words for Kevin Sabet here.
There he is.
Yeah, I had some words for him. And what I didn't say there, and we're going to revisit this. Maybe we should have on Dr. Keith Saunders, longtime Normal, a Massachusetts-based, but member of Normal National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws.
Marijuana laws, yeah.
And he's a national board member. I don't know if he still currently is, but he has been over the years. Certainly a important person who's done a lot in Massachusetts and nationally. And he, years ago, so it would be 10 years ago in the lead up to 2016. This is like 10 years later, and here we are right back where we started. So
perhaps, go ahead, sorry.
No, I wish I had two bet. So Kevin Sabet, I believe it was at the Kennedy Center in Dorchester. I could be wrong. There was a debate, and it was like one of the debates for that ballot initiative for legalization of recreational cannabis in Massachusetts. Here, go to the full screen so I could do it. And Kevin Sabet held up 2 bags of gummies.
Oh, full screen. Sorry.
And he held up 2 bags of gummies at this debate, and he said, one of these gummies one of these bags is infused, and the other bag is not. I got this on my way here to this debate. I think he said like at a highway rest stop or a deli or something, right? And he's saying that's going to be the problem. If you legalize in mass, kids are always going to be, oh, there's like just as if the kids are drinking beer accidentally when they meant to have orange juice all the time. Total craziness. Anyway, so Dr. Keith Saunders, our friend, went behind him after he put those down during the debate and stole both of the bags.
Yep.
Okay. We had him doing it on video. He did it, for us, with us, and we had them both tested at a lab.
And
I believe it may have been Pro Verde. I don't recall. And neither had weed in it. He was full of shit.
Right.
He just got 2 bags of gummies. And yeah, was it a little bit of theater? Sure. Does he get that license? No, fuck him. Oh, you know what? Sure, he can have it. But what I have is I could call him a liar. So Kevin Sabet's a liar. I look forward to perhaps debating him. There'll be no moderating for me. I don't believe in objectivity. I think it's way more. I think readers need to understand what's going on here. This is no,
who is this? Who is this Sabet cat? Like what?
He is a grifter extraordinaire. His group is SAM. I can't even think of what it stands for.
You got it up.
He's one of these guys who, really basically traverses, goes around the country. Probably be a good, either Christopher Guest character or documentary figure. Probably, I don't know what kind of hotel rooms he stays in, how good his grift is, but
smart approaches to marijuana. That's his group.
Yeah, right. And he, first of all, his big thing is that he's a bipartisan character. I think he advised Bush and Clinton, and to a lot of normies out there that actually means something. They don't stop for one fucking second to think, wow, both of them were terrible on drug policy. Like the bipartisan bell rings, and some people are and just salivate. But basically, he is a guy who it's just always something, and he assists these statewide prohibitionist efforts, whether they've been fighting. Don't forget, not every state has legal weed yet, so there's always a phone call coming in. Hey, we're a bunch of Christians or Republicans or whatever the fuck, concerned parents in whatever state it is, whatever flyover state. Come help us fight the bad liberals. And
is he a Christian himself, or does he just see a niche for himself to make a living, a nice living?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know much about him. I don't want to talk out of turn. I do know he has been. I do know there's been relationship as far as coalition with efforts by Patches, the dumbest Kennedy of all, and that's saying a lot. And I still say that about Patrick Kennedy, Ted Kennedy's son, despite RFK Jr. being who he is.
Kind of setting the bar even lower, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, Patches makes RFK Jr. look like something out of I almost said something out of Camelot. Really, this guy is a fucking joke. He crashed his car in DC, and of course, I wouldn't hold that against them. People have their issues. I don't think that they should be driving when they have their issues, but that's his business and the business of the intersection that he plowed through and the district police. But this guy has spent every waking hour since then. And the fun. They all work for the. They'll take money from the the so-called recovery drug industry. So it's like anti-weed but pro. It's It is unbelievable. A lot of these people, that's the thing. People think I don't just hate the prohibitionists because they're getting in the way of what I think is just and right. I hate them because of the shit they push in as a replacement. The Associated Press article we were just talking about at one point actually laments that there's no drug like there is for alcohol,
like naloxone,
right? That makes you not want that, not want weed. So
right.
Like forget about. We're not. It's one thing to like give not have an opposition quote if there's in an article about a drug that does that, but to invent that fucking drug for the sake of an argument when you haven't even shown why it should exist, to me is absolutely crazy, and something that a hatchet would come out on my desk if that crossed it. It's so.
We might accept, we might let an article go by that was looking at one side, but we're going to follow up with another article very quickly and say, like, this is a short series, whatever. Now, here's the other perspective. I mean, should we hold our breath with AP, the Globe, and others on doing that? I don't know.
I'll tell listen, I think I'll tell you right now, I know the experience of actual advocates trying to get pieces in, forget it. They cut it up, they're editing you. It is totally ridiculous.
Well, folks should know that to this day, like, because Chris does a lot of this kind of journalism, even just mention, like, right now, if we were monetizing this channel, which we're not, like, YouTube would probably demonetize this show, right? Like, because we're like talking about cannabis, right?
I mean, that's a great conversation. I think I'll just say briefly, like, the rules are not totally clear. These companies that deal international that exist in many countries have stricter law. TikTok, there's no mention. TikTok, those who do cannabis on TikTok have to be so creative. They deserve anything they get, any riches they attain. I have literally put a pot leaf, done. I mean, they'll close your account, like, I don't want to be there anyway. Instagram, Facebook, we've had good success. Tens of thousands of views on some ones. And I think when we're talking policy and not showing the plant, and we're just talking about politics and stuff like that, we have they cut us off 3 times in the past couple of months. Every time, right away, we got right back.
What I'm saying is it remains extraordinarily difficult to have a society-wide dialogue on this particular issue.
Well, it's never going to happen now because, and I don't want to get, I guess it's a good place to come almost full circle because with hemp out there, and with that being a federal issue, and with half the people, I'm making 40% of the people out there literally not even consuming THC, but consuming all, like, these other cannabinoids.
Yeah, CBD or whatever.
Will never catch up. It's so far out there that I think at this juncture, I just want to see the least amount of people lose their shirts. I want to see the largest number of independent people who put their lives on the line, care about the crop. And I don't mean that in a corny way, not for the sake of it, but because that's the stuff I like to smoke. Those are the people who care about patients, and they can grow plenty for everybody who doesn't give a shit about any of that. But those are the ones who I'd like to see succeed.
I mean, young viewers in particular should understand where Chris and I are coming from here on the libertarian tip, and in our case, left-wing libertarian, not the capital L, right-wing libertarian types, many of whom also support cannabis legalization and normalization. People have to understand what it's like to be under prohibition. If you didn't grow up with it, Chris is, I think, 46. I'm 59. I mean, most people that run afoul of prohibitionist laws are just users. They're just like, they're doing something like they would take a drink, right? They're having a smoke. They're having now a gummy or something else, and they could be busted for it, in their own homes, at a party, somebody knocks out the party.
It's unthinkable.
People would go to jail for ridiculous amounts of time for this stuff, and only rarely were, it wasn't the distributors, it wasn't the growers they were usually they had enough money to sort of buy their own safety, essentially. Not always, but I mean, and the government itself has been involved historically in different kinds of drug running itself, with cocaine being perhaps the best known, right? For reasons we won't discuss today. There's just all kinds of contradictory garbage. And I think that any person that believes in liberty should want consistent set of laws about, what substances individuals are allowed to use and under what conditions, and that punishment, if there is any, for individuals using things should be extremely light if they exist. We would prefer they do not exist. We prefer we get to a situation where you're not seeing a whole lot of effort going into ruining the lives of people that are either trying to make money, from, as we now have, as Chris says, tens of thousands of people in the legal cannabis industry in Massachusetts making a living, not the living many of them thought they would make, right, out of this stuff, right? The gold rush is already pretty much over, I think, for the few that benefited from it. But to make a living, like they might make working at it or owning a liquor store or a liquor distribution outfit or whatever, a marketing outfit that does it, and not have to be looking over their shoulder for the rest of their life, especially when the amount of provable harm to most users it has not been demonstrated. If it had been demonstrated,
especially especially if we're looking at an equation compared to the good that it does. I mean, I think props to all those who are still, pushing back and showing what the efficacy on many fronts, doing
y'all
gotta
get your act together though. Really
gotta get your act together. No, I mean, this is I wrote in that piece that you had up before the first when this news the news has been breaking slowly.
I'm quoting you in saying that, right?
By the way, while we're on here, I just want to say that WBZ put out a story today about how social consumption is coming. Social consumption, of course, meaning licensing for cannabis lounges, whether it's like a bowling alley, a cannabis shopping mall, whatever. Okay, so as opposed to just buying it, being able to consume on premises, and there's going to be various kinds of licenses, 3 general classes. One for like a dispensary that wants to just become a bigger, also have, consumption. All right. That's going to be called supplemental. Then there'll be hospitality. That's like if you have, a deli and now you're going to have a add-on weed, a weed deli, right? Then third would be the event organizer license class. All right. Now I've been following this, talking to its memo, to an extent. BINJ has been following this for years. It's been, coming down, there's been some, false hope, but really it's been taking a long time, but we've known it's coming. And then WBZ puts a story out today that it's going to pass a vote on Thursday. Now it's not, they're acting like we're going to on Friday, we're going to be able to smoke a joint. Now, not necessarily in the actual article, but the way it's being presented. And is it journalistic malpractice? No. Is it aggravating for me? A little bit. I compare it's kind of like if I covered a sport in the off season and last season, and then in the freezing cold winter off season, and then WBZ shows up at preseason, acts like nobody else has ever known about this team, and then says that it's starting tomorrow when in fact it's a month away.
Time. Yeah. So, and I mean, look, I should bring in the class element here as well, as I am wont to do. Like a lot of the punishments, on the one hand, we have stuff like you're discussing now, where people are getting more rights. Well, they're able to claim more rights. They're able to do more stuff, right? Like things are becoming normalized, as we've said, as legalization progresses. On the other hand, we now have this fairly serious threat that could roll stuff back. But the people that generally get punished are working class people or poor people in particular. And BIPOC, Black, Latino, Latina, Asian folks, Native Americans are getting punished even more, right? So do we want to go back to that in any of this? I would say no.
It's a great full circle because I think it goes without saying that the demographic that is pushing for this, your conservatives, your bedroom community suburbanites,
upper middle class and above, who never, by the way, had any threat.
Give a shit about that. They never did.
Rich folks never had any threat of going to jail for any of this in most situations, by the way. Go ahead. Sorry.
Yeah, well, and it's true. I mean, the amount of and listen, their measure wouldn't necessarily return us to that. But I honestly don't know what the hell would go on. We have a working functioning despite some issues at the bureaucratic level, Cannabis Control Commission. We just need to keep going forward. Oh, and by the way, it's so funny. We're such bad capitalists, Jason. Neither of us has
That I know.
actually mentioned that this is a $1 billion industry. And one thing that even as a person who covers this was surprised to learn in detail is that it's not the Cannabis Control Commission, even though the apparatus gets bigger and they have more and more to manage as there are more licensees who do more business, they do not get like a percentage of the sales. That goes into a general fund, and then they have to claw every dollar out of the legislature, who's always dumping on them. And this is not the CCC has its issues, but I think people really need to realize that, and they don't care though. So my point is that it could be worse. It was worse. It's getting better. The access is fantastic. People
Why go backwards?
People are drinking less alcohol. I'll just wrap it up by saying, read Jack Gorslein's stuff on psychedelics, because if you think that weed killed alcohol, you just wait till you see what psychedelics does to all of this. And if there is a conspiracy, it is a subconscious one to end that. And no, I'm not tripping right now. I'm not very good at talking where I am.
Not as far as you all know. Yes.
Yeah. But really, no, I mean it. That's an interesting front to watch, and we have great coverage of that through BINJ. So that, by the way, we should have Jack on next. Why don't we have Jack?
We should actually, and perhaps the naloxone, or I hope I'm saying that right, that people are looking for cannabis, I guess, might be one of the psychedelics that are now being worked on. We should also mention,
I think the reason we know naloxone might be, I don't want to mess these up.
That's not the Lazarus drug.
No. Yeah. What? Yeah. I think it. Hold on. Yeah. No.
I apologize.
No, it's close. It's Naloxone.
Naloxone.
Naltrexone is for alcohol use disorder.
Okay.
Right. And then
Naltrexone.
Naltrexone, and then Narcan is called is Naloxone. So they're very close.
Sorry about that.
They're very close. They're both related to drugs, and I think so. But anyway, I think this has been great. It's nice to actually speak at length about some of this, because I'm always trying to jam it into 3 minutes or less, or a couple of paragraphs. But
you and I don't usually talk about this stuff, so it's
all and it's interesting to watch for sure. It's kind of, even though I like drugs and I like policy, I never thought of myself as a drug policy reporter. I was always just a person who smoked weed at the places I worked. Who was like, oh yeah, go, obviously, black person, go cover black issues, this person go, stoner, go cover the weed issues. And so, but that was cool. And I was always able to get good weed when it was outlawed, largely because of these connections. No, I will not mince my words on that. I will not. No need to bite my tongue on that anymore.
I do want to say that we understand that nothing in the world is perfect and good always, in all times, at all times for all people. Certainly, me and cannabis, I'm one of the people that has worsened anxiety from it, so I stopped using it. Right, which is mentioned, I noticed in that Globe piece, and there is data on that, and that's true, right? But we won't know any of these things if researchers aren't even allowed to study stuff like psychedelics and previously cannabis, and that's still dicey. For federal researchers, it's still not a thing, right? So the more we know, the easier it is to know, okay, here are the problems that have actually been identified, and here's how we want to negotiate this as a society in a deliberative fashion based on scientific research, not sort of people saying, sky god mad, because we say so, because, we have a holy book that doesn't even mention any of this stuff, or at least doesn't directly mention it, but okay, we've received word, this is bad, so now you all have to listen to us. That kind of stuff does not play with us very well, in as much as we respect all religions, at least the ones that are not just directly harming tons of people. So,
and we'll finish that on the religion episode.
Yeah, someday. But let's talk about a certain missing statue quickly to wrap up here. I guess I could pull up another piece I had queued up. Where are we? Where's that other piece? So regulations. Well, here we are. So Chris, also wrote in the last little while, like 2 days ago.
Well, I've been writing
um,
for 15 years, Jason.
I know this is a an update, right? So there's this like statue that was disappeared from the State House, right? How long ago was it, Chris?
Well, we don't know when it
The
actually
Brooks bust.
We don't know when it disappeared. We know that it was sold from an auction house on Beacon Hill in '92. And that's Grogan and Company, which I don't think they're located there anymore, but they were. So basically, I mean, here's the short of it. We should save most of it for and we could do a whole episode. But basically, also, if this is intriguing to you out there, I've done 5 videos already. I'm going to keep going until we get this bust back. But years ago, I discovered that more than 400 items, I think, between battle flags and letters and actual paintings and stained glass and any kind of artwork you can imagine has been stolen out of the Massachusetts State House over the past several hundred years. I did this. I actually happen to have my file here because I just did a video on that.
Oh, should I just show you now? Oh, yeah, I'll take the article.
Yeah, just show me. Yeah, so basically, I just these are like actual correspondence. So I actually did it by using all these old State House manifests and then comparing. So I'd have like the manifest from 1950 and 1960, and then what didn't make it that decade, So I would know this stuff disappeared.
Wow.
And that's interesting in and of itself. But what happened was right before I published, and this was for the Boston Phoenix, this article, 2012, I think, right before we published, I found one of the pieces of art. It's a bust of Charles Brooks, who is a early child, like literally, he was in normal schools. He was an early child education advocate, but big time. I mean, he really, he's an important person in history. That bust of him, meanwhile, was done by Thomas Crawford, who is literally one of the most famous American artists. This is it
here. Are we looking at it on screen now?
Yeah, that is it. That's the one. So,
okay.
So that bust, I traced it. It's in storage in Los Angeles, LACMA. And I don't care if I have to scream this every day for the rest of my life. We got to get it back, because as I wrote this week, it is so ridiculous. People really wonder, what's the point? What do you do all this journalism for? And yeah, sometimes I wonder it myself. But you know what? We do have impact. In fact, we just wrote a letter for donors. If you're out there, you want to help out today, where we highlighted some of the impact that we have. What the shape of the parole board and things like this. We have that, but this very tangible thing that I've been showing, it is in storage at a museum. It was stolen on the other coast of America.
That's the Los Angeles County Museum of Art, LACMA, right?
Yeah. So yes, and when my first article came out, the Phoenix is a bigger platform than we have now. I did some television, and it resonated.
The Boston Phoenix is a long gone alternative news weekly, folks. It went under in 2013. Chris used to work for it. Yeah. So, I'm adding gloss. I'm like your hypertext. Yeah, so.
What I'm saying is that basically, the state didn't want to participate. They were mad about the article, and then time goes by. The Baker administration, Charlie Baker, our last governor, in between, Deval Patrick was the governor when this happened. Or when I wrote the story, I couldn't get Baker to fight.
Maura Healey.
Now I'm working on Maura Healey. So that's the idea. I'm hoping to ask her personally if I see her around the State House. I've already written her people. I'm writing to all of the trustees of the Los Angeles County Museum of Art. I'm writing to art experts in Boston. I'm writing to art magazines. I have people writing to people. I am not going to stop until we get this back, because it is that ridiculous. And we are going to bring the Brooks bust back to Boston. I said it in one
hashtag right there. Hashtag bring the Brooks bust, and try saying this 3 times in a row. Quickly back to Boston. All right,
we'll close it at an hour. I got
do more. Yep, we'll do more on that in the future. Definitely. I'm going to stop screen sharing. I'm just going to tell folks. I'll throw it up here once more to donate to us. Our big sort of 2-month fundraiser every year. We're really trying to get to $50,000. We've been able to do it in recent years every year. We certainly need to do it, if we're going to make it through even half of next year. So go to binge.news and smash that donate button that you'll see there. And, just throw us whatever change you can. You got more than change. Throw us that. Every dollar up to $1,000 for each individual donation will get matched up to the first $15,000 donated. And we're not there yet. And we may have word of another big match that will even double folks' money. They'll get $2, donated to us for every one they give. But we'll let y'all know about that when it happens. So, all right, that's it. It's 9 p.m. We've gone a whole hour. We've never done that before. This has been Chris Faraone, Jason Pramas from Boston Institute for Nonprofit Journalism, and peace. We're out.